The goal of the products overview screen, of course, is to present a list of all the products we can order. And therefore here we'll of course have a normal React component. So we need to import React from React. We'll also need to import a bunch of things from React Native for sure. For example, I will need a flat list here because I will output a list of products. We don't know how long that list it will be, but it potentially is very long. So we want to be able to optimize it for scrolling, and that is what the flat list does out of the box. And we can import more components as we need them. So these are the two base imports. Now with that, I'll create my products overview screen, overview screen component here, simply in this function form here where we receive props, and then we have to return some JSX here in the end. And in the end, I will also export my products overview screen here as the default of this file. Now with that, the question of course is what's in there, what's inside of our component. And in there, I of course want to render my flat list. I want to render my flat list of products. Now, of course, we have no products yet, but we can add some. Just as before, I will therefore add a models folder where I can define how a product should look like. This is not a must do, but it can help you organize your data and make sure that you never accidentally work with different types of products where you simply forgot to add a certain property in one place of your app. So therefore here in the product.js file in the models folder, I'll create a product class which has a constructor where I define how a product should look like. And I want every product to have a unique ID. It should also have an owner ID, which is the ID of the user who created it. It should have a title. It should have an image URL. It should have a description, and it should have a price. These are the things that make up a product for me in this application. Now, of course, when we receive all these things as arguments in the constructor, I want to store them in properties of this object, which we can create with the help of this constructor. So therefore, I do this assignment, which you also saw before, where I store all that data we receive in properties of the created object. So here we store the title, the image URL, the IDs, and of course, description and the price. With that setup here, we have a blueprint for a product, and we will use that in Redux, and we will then in the end get such a list of products here in our products overview screen. Now, to get it there, we need to tap into Redux, and for that, to be possible, we need to set up Redux. So let's go to the store folder now. And in there, I want to have an actions subfolder and a reducers subfolder. In this app, by the way, we will have different reducers and actions, unlike in the last module here. So for the moment, we'll start with the products.js file here in the reducers folder. And I'll also add a products.js file in the actions folder. Again, if it's confusing to you that we have the same name here in different folders, you can always see in which file I am here at the top here with this breadcrumb feature. And of course, you could also work with different names in your app if this is confusing. I think it's pretty clear though in which file I am working. It's clearly selected here as well. So let's start in the products reducer. And in there, I want to define my initial state because this kind of defines how my products related state slice will look like. And now, of course, as always in programming, there is more than one possible approach. I think it makes sense to say that we have a list of available products, that's an array, and of user products. And user products, these are simply the products which we created. So where the owner ID is the ID of the currently logged in user. And for the moment, we'll have no login feature, but later that will be the case. For the moment, you will just set this up in a dummy way. Available products should be all products, or maybe also only the products which we didn't create, so that we can't buy our own products. Though in reality, in most shops, you can also buy what you sell. So I think we can also just take all products here. But that's something you can also fine tune in your application. So we have these two product arrays. Now in the reducer here, which is a function, where we get the state, which should be initialized with our initial state and should take this as a default value, and where we get an action. In there, we will later handle different action types so that we can, for example, add a new product and so on. For the moment, I'll just always return my state here. Therefore, I will always return my initial state, of course, and that will allow us to then tap into Redux and at least get that initial state. Now, of course, without the possibility of adding new products, our initial state isn't that useful though, because it has empty lists of products here, so nothing we could render. So just as I did it before, I'll also add a data folder and set up some dummy data in here, which we'll not use throughout the entire module, but which we can use for now so that we have some products to get started with. And for this, you find attached this dummy data.js file, which you can just take to replace yours, or where you can just copy in the content into your dummy data.js file. And what I do in there is I import my product model. So of course, therefore, you should make sure that this path is correct for you if you just copied my code. And then I set up this products array here where I have a bunch of dummy products. And now it's important, we got the ID of the product, then we got the owner ID, then we got the title. And you should make sure that your product model is set up so that this order is correct. So here we got the title. Then we got the image URL as the fourth argument you receive. Then you have the description as the fifth and the price as the last argument. So make sure that your product model is set up in the way that this is the order of arguments. This is what you have here. In the end, I export this array as a default, and therefore now in this product reducer, we can simply import this. So there we can import products, our list of dummy products, from the data folder and there from the dummy data.js file. And we can simply initialize our available products with products here for the moment. And the user products can also be initialized with that, though for the user products, there is one little difference which I want to make. I want to filter them for a certain owner ID, because in the end, not all products will be created by us. Instead here, I will filter that dummy array, look at every product that only include products in my user products array, where the owner ID is equal to U1, which if you have a look at the dummy data is simply the case for some products, not for all of them. Some of them have the U1 owner ID, and this will be the products I use here as user products, as a dummy setup. With that, our reducer for the products is set up here. We can ignore the product's actions for the moment. We'll of course add some later. And now we can go to the app.js file and set up Redux there as well. For that, we need to import something from Redux. And of course, we also need to import something from React Redux. Now, there's something we need to import from Redux here. That is, of course, the create store function and the combine reducers function, so that we can create one root reducer. At the moment, of course, we have only one reducer, but as I mentioned in this app, we will actually have multiple reducers in the end. So here you definitely need to combine your reducers. And from React Redux, we need the provider component, which we wrap around our app to, well, provide something. We will then, of course, also need to import the products reducer, or however you want to name it, from the store folder, there from reducers and there from the products file, so that we can thereafter create our root reducer by calling combine reducers, where we then pass in an object where we map, let's say, to products, but that key is up to you, our products reducer, and later we will add more reducers there. And then we can create our store with create store, and this in the end takes our root reducer as an argument. And thereafter, down there in the JSX code, I will create my provider component. In between the opening and closing tags, I will then also later have my screen. For the moment, we'll not have anything there. This is not valid JSX, by the way, but we'll fix it later. And for the provider component, of course, we have to set the store prop and set this to the store constant, or the store in general we're creating here. With that, Redux should be set up. With that, we'll later be able to tap into it here from the products overview screen. And with that, of course, the next step also is to add navigation so that we can see that products overview screen. So let's continue working on these steps next.